Hey guys, it is time once again for another IHEARTHU King of the Hill. I'm Doa, and once again Artosis is still on vacation for another week or two yet, so we're still going to be kicking it solo, but hey, it's still going to be fun. A lot of great games of Hearthstone coming up, and of course, if you're new to the King of Hill, this is a best of 7 basically, where each player picks 3 classes, and then they bring 3 decks apiece, and basically they bring in 2 decks, the winner stays, and the loser has to bring in a second deck, and so the first person to eliminate the other guy's 3 decks wins and becomes the reigning King of the Hill. And you know what, we've actually had a new King of the Hill every single week we've done this, which is great. I love how vibrant the scene is and how many good top players there are, and it really shows you too, like how the meta is shifting. If you go back and watch King of the Hill #1, the decks are very different from what we're seeing now. There's some constants that go through, like Paladin mid-range is always good, but one deck that just springs to mind off the top of the head that's come up really quickly is the aggressive mage deck. That's kind of had its rise. The rogue decks are gone by the wayside. Priest is kind of coming and going, but right now still a bit in vogue, although I think Priest is on the decline a bit now. But enough about that, I guess. Let's take a look at our 2 players today. Of course, you can see on your screen, we have our newcomer Cixah, who's a prominent poster on the IHEARTHU forums, of course, one of the people that helped Artosis and the rest of us design the decks and test the decks that Artosis ended up winning BlizzCon with. So this guy's really smart. He's kind of the master of Paladin, I guess you could say. He's like my Paladin brother-in-arms in terms of aggressive mid-range Paladins, and that's what he's starting off with, Cixah's Miniatures, which is also a deck that Kripparrian took to BlizzCon too. So kind of interesting there that we've got this deck that we've seen Kripparrian use in BlizzCon, that we saw Artosis use something very similar at BlizzCon, and now we get to see the creator himself take it into the IHEARTHU King of the Hill. And of course, our reigning champion, Savjz, which I pronounced his name as last week, is sort of close in a not so close kind of way, but hey, we worked with what we got, so he wasn't too mad. It's okay, don't worry about it. But anyway, he's our reigning King of the Hill. We'll see if he can keep it up. He's entering the arena today with a Fast and Furious mage deck, as you can see here. And so taking a look at these 2 decks, we've got a lot of gold cards actually for Savjz. Wow, look at that. He's blinging, not just a crown on his little portrait there, but blinging in his deck as well. Interesting to see he's including the Flame Strike. Generally, that's one that's kind of been left out of a lot of aggressive mage decks, because by the time you have enough money to cast Flame Strike, you're usually looking to do that killing blow. The turn 8 Pyroblast to finish somebody off is the common goal of an aggressive mage deck. So I'm a little bit surprised that he's got the Flame Strike in there, but nobody can deny it's great board control. I mean, 4 damage to every minion out there, that's gonna be able to help you get a lot of comebacks. And I think what we're seeing here, as the variety of mid-range decks is kind of rising in the current meta in Hearthstone, you're going to need to start including more of that stuff, because you're going to have more close games. Like we saw last week, the tempo of the games was very similar across all the decks, because the players were playing a lot more of that aggressive mid-range style. So like mid-range aggression is a way to go right now in Hearthstone, and so the response to this is trying to get that extra little late game edge by being able to theoretically, hopefully, clear your opponent's board and then come back with something strong the next turn. So we'll see if he can do it. That one surprised me a little bit that he included that there. Otherwise, everything pretty normal. I mean, you've got Blood Mage Thalnos in there. He's kind of like hit or miss in terms of aggressive mage stuff, just because you could be putting something down aggressive for 2 mana rather than him. He is kind of card draw, and like maybe if you get it, some extra spell damage, but usually he's dealt with very quickly. So we'll see. I feel like this is a little bit slower than some of the aggressive mage decks. I feel like Fast and Furious could maybe be renamed to Methodically Furious, or maybe, but it's not too fast, too furious. That was a terrible joke, but let's move on. Cixah's Miniatures, let's take a look at that deck specifically as well. 2 Avenging Wraths, which is in there. That's kind of interesting. That's something that I know he's been kind of toying around with, and me too. I mean, in all the Paladin decks I've made, you want to put in Avenging Wrath because it's so strong, and I like that he's got 2 in there. I like that he's finally taken the step to put him in. You'll notice also that the Ragnaros that has been really popular in pretty much all decks, but also Paladin decks, is out of there, and also Tyrion Fordring is not in this deck too, and he and I have talked a lot about this, and the conclusion that we kind of came to in the end was that these 2 cards, being 8 mana apiece, are maybe a little bit too expensive to go with the theme of the aggressive mid-range Paladin deck. So I agree with him on that one. I do like the Avenging Wraths in there. It's going to be fun to see how this one turns out. We've got Sylvanas Windrunner in both of these decks. She's becoming a very, very popular card these days. Everybody's always liked her. She's always been good, but I feel like I'm seeing her in more decks now than I used to, both on the ladder and in tournaments, things like that. Aside from those, it's a pretty standard Paladin mid-range deck. Like I said, this guy's been playing this style forever. I know it really well. It's my personal favorite style to play in Hearthstone too, so looking forward to seeing how these two decks match up, and I think it's time to get into game number 1. And here we are, guys. Game number 1, Cixah versus Savjz, and it's a Leper Gnome immediately for Cixah, our Paladin challenger here. And that Argent Commander that Savjz drew isn't going to be too helpful immediately, but he's got his own Leper Gnome. Let's see, while the game's already starting, I'm checking out the opening hand, seeing what we've got. Cixah, not a terrible opening hand. You could do a little bit of damage with that. Got the Knife Juggler in there as well. Can't really play it against something like a Leper Gnome, though, so we'll see what it's going to be. And yeah, I think that's perfectly fine to coin and take out the Leper Gnome. I like that. With an aggressive Paladin deck, you know there's buffing in there, so totally agree with using the coin on that. Not to mention if he just played his own Leper Gnome, his opponent would just get to trade. And that's not that great either, so perfect turn. And there we go. So, Knife Juggler is out, and now the Leper Gnome's going to come in. Yeah, might as well. The other option, let's see, he could, yeah, I guess he could ping it, and he's going to just go ahead and ping it. Alright, so that means next turn he does have the option to ping the Knife Juggler to death and get his Leper Gnome out, which is really nice. Meanwhile, Max sends a message. Okay, so Savjz is going to end his turn. He could also play that Acolyte of Pain as well, but I think what we're going to see, well, obviously we're going to see that Leper Gnome, and then another Fireball. So Abusive Sergeant, going to just get the damage out of the Knife Juggler while he can, and he's going to be able to do 7 damage at this turn. Wow. That was really good, and so that's a situation where it's like, yeah, would have been nice to be able to get rid of the Knife Juggler, but not possible. He's got the Cone of Cold as well, so that handles the board quite nicely. It does get rid of the Divine Shield on the Argent Squire, and it does also freeze it. So, now it's a good turn for Divine Favor. Get a lot of draw out of that, and I love drawing Divine Favor on turn number 1. I actually don't like it so much if I have the coin, because then you get those extra cards in hands, including the coin. So drawing Divine Favor like that, using it on turn 3 like you did, usually results in a great draw. You can see you got a lot of cards out of it, so pretty much the best use you could end up getting out of that card that time. Alright, so what does Savjz have? He's got the Leper Gnome, he's got the Frostbolt as well. Might just want to play the Acolyte of Pain here. He's got 5 mana. I would be tempted to just go Acolyte of Pain and then Leper Gnome, but he's going to go ahead and, yeah, he's going to do that. Okay, I thought, because the other option would be to Fireball the Argent Squire, because now, obviously, Cixah is going to trade the 1/1 for the 2/1, so you could make an argument that it would have been better to Fireball the Squire and then put out the Leper Gnome and save the Agent of Pain, but with the card draw that Cixah got last turn, I think Savjz wants to keep up card advantage-wise, so it's a good decision. Divine Shield, though, from that Argent Protector. It's going to let him keep the Squire alive, and there's the oh-so-annoying Harvest Golem. And I gotta say, guys, Savjz is in a little bit of trouble already. I mean, if you look at Cixah's hand, too, man, he's got 2 Avenging Wraths. It's going to be really tough for Savjz to keep anything on the board at this point. So what's he going to do? He can kill the Squire and get a draw out of it. Wouldn't be bad. A lot of people like to ping their Acolyte of Pain with the Mage Hero ability to get a card draw, too, but in this case, you can just use him to clear out a little bit of your opponent's board, so that's fine. So let's see, what have we got? Yeah, he's going to go ahead and Frostbolt the Harvest Golem. Might as well get that out of the way. You've also got mana on top of that to ping it. So this does reduce it to just a 2/2. He may lose the Acolyte, but he get another card draw. So he did keep pretty good control of the board. He's got a lot of big single target damage coming in his hand, though, so it's going to be interesting. Alright, so Cixah. There we go, goes ahead and attacks, and now what does he do? He's got the sword, nice, and he's going to play the Leper Gnome after that, I'm sure, or not Leper Gnome, Knife Juggler, who is not even a gnome. So that couldn't have been more incorrect. But there we go, 4/3 Knife Juggler, pretty terrifying, but against a mage deck, should be able to handle it quite easily. He's got 6 mana, so is this a turn to use the Commander? I think you do, yep, there it is. And when you play Argent Commander, it's good to think of it not just as a creature with Divine Shield, but think of it as a 4 damage to any creature, and you get a 4/3. And the reason why I don't say damage to player as well with that is that sometimes they have taunts, so you can't always count on that. But in a sense, Argent Commander is a bit of direct damage. As you can see, it didn't last very long. It got Hammer of Wrath immediately, and Cixah still maintains really good board control. Yeah, now with the Secret out too, basically Savjz is in this position where he's kind of, it's sort of snowballing into Cixah's favor now. Unless Savjz gets some sort of big AoE spell, he's never really going to be able to maintain board control efficiently with what he's got. He can take out the 2-1, and he can, you know, play a couple cards here and there, but it's going to be tough. So there's the 3-6. That's a good play. Takes a little bit to get rid of it. It's going to be annoying to deal with, but remember, he still doesn't know what the secret is. And there's Consecrate. Now, he could also play Sylvanas this turn. Avenging Wrath would be perfectly fine to use as well, since he's got 2 of them. He could maybe hope to get lucky and reduce the 3-6 down to a 3-2, and yeah, he's going to go ahead and go for that. Totally agree with it. He can always make a... Okay, so he didn't quite get as much damage onto the minion, but he was able to get a lot of damage onto the mage, which is perfectly fine. He's just going to attack through because, yeah, he's getting so close to being able to do lethal damage here. And another 2-2 from the hero ability because of the Sword of Justice. And again, Cixah just in a great spot. Shattered Sun Cleric, he can use that to buff his 3-3, I suppose. I mean, the fireballs aren't really that helpful because Cixah is so high on life that it wouldn't really pay to just do damage like that. He wants to get this board control back, and he could. He could use the Argent Commander to do just that, along with the 3-3, and I think that's exactly what he's going to do. Yeah. And he's got 8 mana, so he could also put out Blood Mage Thalnos or a Fairy Dragon as well. And yeah, there's that Noble Sacrifice, so not quite going to be able to... Oh, it's even a 3-2, of course, because of the swords. That just right straight out takes out his Elemental. I would probably just go Fairy Dragon and Argent Commander just to get some sort of board presence back. He wants to start trading creature to creature so he can use those spells on his opponent. And he's going to go for Blood Mage Thalnos. Now, this is card draw, which is nice. It also does buff his large single target damage that he does have. He now has an 11 damage Pyroblast, so that's not that bad. But I've got a feeling that, yeah, Avenging Wrath and the Blood Mage is not going to make it. No big surprise there. If that would have survived, that would have been hilariously good luck for him. But, oh well. Down to 5 health. I don't really think there's a way Savjz can end up taking this game. And this is kind of the danger. Another nice Divine Favor. This is, you know, some of the danger of playing this aggressive mage deck is that when you run into this mid-range paladin deck, a lot of times you will struggle with this in that paladins will generally be putting more durable creatures down quicker than you can as a mage, even as an aggro mage. And this is why right now the mid-range paladin is probably, in my opinion, the strongest deck in Hearthstone, because it deals with a lot of the other really solid standard decks. Like, if you want to win a lot of games on ladder, you can totally play what Savjz is playing. You'll win so many games on ladder. It's so consistent. But against this mid-range paladin deck, that's one of the few things that it does suffer against. So a bit of a deck mismatch between these two players, and there's really not a whole lot he can do. I mean, he can clear the board. He can stay alive for another turn or two. I would maybe, if I was him, consider playing the Mana Worm and then Frostbolt to 2-2, and then maybe do something like a Fireball on his opponent. And it looks like that's what he's going to do. We'll see if he ends up using the Fireball here. Nope, just going to play another creature, and that's okay too. Getting a little bit of board advantage back. And he even gets to buff it too, so it's not a bad turn at all. Unfortunately for him, we know that there's still Consecrate available, which is going to be really annoying. In fact, there's 2 Consecrates, so he can use one and then use the other to clear it. But yeah, I mean, with no blockers, he might as well just go with the win with the Abusive Sergeant. And there it is, a win for Cixah, and a loss for our reigning champion Savjz. So we'll see if he can pick it up in game 2. Alright guys, it's time to take a look at the decks that we're going to see in Game 2 of this Best of 7 King of the Hill between Cixah and Savjz. And as you can see, Cixah up a game because of Cixah's miniatures, a really solid Paladin deck. But this time we have Armed and Dangerous, a rogue deck brought in by Savjz. And this is kind of a cool deck. I want to talk about this one a little bit because it's sort of the the new school aggressive mid-range rogue deck. It's kind of the new school combo rogue deck, if you could say. And if you look at this, it's mostly creatures. There's not a lot of spells in this deck. In fact, there's only Eviscerate, Betrayal, and Backstab as far as direct damage spells go in this deck. The only other spell being Deadly Poison that I can see. Everything else is creatures, and that's kind of a difference from what we've seen a lot in the past. But what you need to think about when you're thinking about what is direct damage in a CCG, it's not necessarily your fireballs. It's not necessarily spells that you cast. It's not necessarily the 2 damage that comes out from your SI7 agent. What it is it could be the 2 damage that your Dark Iron Dwarf gives another creature. It could be the little buff that your Defender of Argus gives a creature. The direct damage isn't always just, well, I guess I'll say it this way. The better way in my mind to think about direct damage is that it's simply damage that comes from nowhere. It comes out of the blue, right? And that can be from a spell, it can be from buffing, and it just is damage that is kind of unavoidable because there's no interrupts in Hearthstone. That's direct damage in a Hearthstone sense. So when you look at this deck, it's very, very cool because a lot of rogue decks in the past have concentrated on things like Assassinate, you know, that kind of stuff where you use the card, you remove something, and then that card is gone. This has more of a theme where it's going to be more solid. You remove things via damage, but ideally, you're going to have a creature left over when you do it. So that's really, really neat. I love this new style of rogue. I play this kind of deck actually on the ladder all the time, and it's absolutely one of the most fun decks, I think, to play at the moment in Hearthstone. So I will see who wins it. I think these decks are actually very evenly matched, honestly. I think a lot of it's going to depend for Cixah. If he can get some direct damage out early on with his Knife Juggler, if he can get some buffing with Sword of Justice, because I think he's going to be playing a little bit of catch-up board-wise, theoretically, on this rogue deck. But we'll see what happens. We'll see if Savjz can tie up the series, see if he can maybe get one step closer to retaining his spot of the King of the Hill, or if Cixah will get one step himself closer to being our new king. So let's get in the game. And here we are, guys, into game number 2, Cixah versus Savjz, and let's check it out. Cixah with the turn 2, he's got the coin, and he's going to go ahead and pop out the Leper Gnome right away. Going to save that Argent Squire for a little later, it looks like. You don't want to throw everything out right away. And so it's just going to be the weapons. So a total of 4 damage over to Savjz, but hey, you got to get rid of that Leper Gnome. But already, really nice for Cixah, man. I mean, that's great. Being able to do 4 damage off of 1 mana, and that, ladies and gentlemen, is why Leper Gnome has been one of my favorite cards in the game for so long. And Cixah, what's he going to throw out now using the coin? And 3 mana for the Harvest Golem, another really, really annoying creature to deal with early on. And already, Savjz is in a little bit of a predicament. He's got his own Harvest Golem as well, though, and he's got some other good options. So he's up to 3 mana himself. He can throw down the Golem, and it looks like that's exactly what he's going to do. Because why not? And I would maybe, if I were him, consider attacking the other Golem with his weapon, but he's deciding not to do that anyway. Would be a little bit of extra damage. And so Cixah's just going to attack through, going to throw out the Defender as well, the Defending Secret. And so Savjz is down 6 life already. There's the agent. Alright, so what are we going to see here? He's got an option for a card draw. Wouldn't be terrible to throw that down at the moment. But we'll see. He doesn't really have an efficient way to deal with the Harvest Golem right now, which is kind of annoying for him. And I think he's got a pretty good chance. Well, that's not too bad. He's got a pretty good feeling, too, that that's probably the Defender Secret because of last game, right? So he's going to try to pop it right now. This is so smart, actually, to attack with this first. And he's going to take 2 damage himself, yes. However, he's going to be able to get that secret out of the way, which is a really big deal. And then go ahead and backstab that Golem, bring it down to 3 damage. Yep, with the spell power. And now he's going to be able to take that out. Very, very efficient turn. Really well played by Savjz. Handled that secret great. He's got good board control. And now what's Cixah going to do? 4 mana. He can Divine Favor, although, nah, he can't really do that. He's going to go ahead and use Hammer of Wrath, I'm sure, on. Well, maybe not. Hammer of Wrath, normally something you want to save for a little bit later in the game. It would also use up all of his mana. He may actually just want to throw out those 2 Argent Squires and then bring out another Silverhand Recruit just to get stuff on the board. But no, he may Hammer of Wrath here. He may just do it. Yeah, okay, he's going to. He gets a card draw out of it anyway, so he doesn't. It doesn't turn out as terribly as it could have. Now he does have Consecration, which I'm sure is going to make him feel a little bit safer next time. So he does leave a couple things on the board at the end of the turn, but, you know, he got a card draw out of it. He handled it as best he could. Kind of a tough situation to begin with there. So Azure Drake, a little bit more spell damage and a card draw. And just going to put 3 damage on. So Savjz is really bringing it back quite a bit. He's got Betrayal as well. Let's see, Defias Ringleader, Deadly Poison to handle things, and Van Cleef for kind of a finishing blow later in the game. So Savjz, he's got a really good hand. Now, what does Cixah have? He's got those 2 Argent Squires, but he doesn't really have any sort of, weirdly enough, he doesn't really have any sort of good turn 5 creatures. He doesn't have any good mid-range kind of stuff.
The light protects me.
So yeah, he's just going to throw out both of those Squires just to get him on the board, and let's see what else he decides to do. Going to go ahead and use that Divine Favor, I guess. Not enough mana to do anything else, but next turn he will have Leper Gnome, Noble Sacrifice, Consecration. But I think he's in for some pretty big damage this turn. It's not going to be pretty. So the question is, what does Savjz do? Does he use Betrayal in a situation like this? Hard to say. He's got a lot of stuff that requires combo, but not as much stuff to set the combo off. Harvest Golem wouldn't be bad. I would maybe consider playing the Harvest Golem and then pinging something with something else, you know, or either using his hero ability as well. Also getting rid of the Divine Shield with his 2/1 is perfectly fine too, because you do kind of maintain your creature on the board. So yeah, there's a Harvest Golem, and probably gonna think about going into the SI7 agent with that. That wouldn't be bad. He could use Betrayal, he could use Defias just to try to get, you know, more stuff on the board, but if I were him, I'd be really careful about playing creatures this turn, because even though he doesn't know it's in Cixah's hand, he knows that Consecrate is an option too. So he leaves a 1/1 with Divine Shield. He's thinking about it. He's like, I don't know if I want to leave this guy out there, and it is a bit dangerous. So yeah, might as well do that. I might have played that turn a little bit differently if I were him. There's ways that he could have maybe controlled the board a little bit more without putting more of his creatures at risk, but either way, he's still in a great spot, so can't argue with his decision really that much. Alright, so Cixah, he's got the Noble Sacrifice. I think this turn would probably be a pretty good turn for Consecrate, even though he's not going to be able to kill the 3 health minions, but yeah, he's still going to be able to do that. And he'll be able to finish off the agent with his 1/1 if he wants to as well. Abusive Sergeant could finish off the dragon, that is true. He's got Noble Sacrifice to hide behind. And I would go ahead and, well, he doesn't have enough to play the Leper Gnome, but he does have Noble Sacrifice, which will handle either one of those creatures, even if they do get buffed from the Shattered Hand Recruit that we see here, too. So Savjz. Yeah, the other thing, too, is I feel like there's so much removal going back and forth between these decks that you're not going to get a lot of opportunity to play Betrayal. And so, you know, why not use it last turn? That's kind of my line of thinking with that, so we'll see. He's going to use the hero ability to draw out the Defender again. He knows it doesn't matter who he attacks. So there you go. Gets the Defender out of the way. Now he's going to have to give up one of them, but obviously you give up the 2/1 in this case and then just hit for 3. And with 5 mana left, he could go ahead and put down the Azure Drake. That would be okay. I think that would be a good use of it. Yep. A little bit of spell damage, a little bit of card draw. And that Dark Iron Dwarf is going to be pretty nice next turn. So, all in all, Savjz is still in control of this game. He's 2 health down, but it doesn't really matter a whole lot. Now, obviously, there's another Consecrate out, and let's see. Cixah could Consecrate. He could also do True Silver Champion to kill the Drake, and only take 2 damage from that, which wouldn't be too bad. He's thinking about it right now because he knows that Consecrate could get rid of 2 of them, but then he would still have to worry about the Drake for a turn, and he doesn't really have anything else that can kind of handle that because he's got 7 mana, not 8. So I would be tempted. Okay, so he is going to go with the True Silver Champion. And yeah, he's going to... Looks like he's going to maybe put out the Leper Gnome. We'll see. And there we go. So yeah, 2 damage from killing that Drake, because remember, you heal for 2, and then you take 4 from the dragon, so the net total is you lose 2 health. And now we've got a bunch of 1 health stuff out. So he thought it was important enough to get rid of that dragon that he's going to go ahead and allow the 3/1 and the 2/1 to stay out. And he'll take some damage from it, but he's still even on health. He's hoping that he can come back from this. And not to mention, you do want to save that Consecrate for as long as possible, because a lot of the rogue's minions are going to be lower health. So the longer he can hold on to it, the more effective it's going to be too. So where he's still got about 18 health, he's still got that higher health total, I think it's perfectly fine to choose to just leave that and let the potential 5 damage go through from the board. Alright, let's take a look at what Savjz is doing. Could buff with the Shattered Hand Recruit. He's got 8 mana. I don't think I would Van Cleef this turn if I was him. I would maybe just go ahead and buff something up like crazy, and then just do a ton of damage. Like Savjz with his hand has got the opportunity to do a lot of damage this turn. I mean, think about it. He could Shattered Hand Recruit, and Dark Iron Dwarf, and Deadly Poison, and that would be quite a bit. It's hard to cast this and do math at the same time, but let's see. So that'd be 7 plus 1 plus Deadly Poison. No, plus 2 more. 9 plus 4, so he could do what, like 13 damage or something like that if he wanted to, but he's just going to try to control the board a little bit more, it looks like. Always is good to get rid of the Leper Gnome, but he knows, like, here's a playstyle difference type of thing, because some players would be very, very tempted to just go all in and do as much damage as they possibly could with all their creatures and stuff and all their weapons, but against a Paladin deck like this, I think I agree, where it's better, as much as I hate to say it, it is better to just play it safe, control the board, get rid of the creatures, and take like a little bit longer. But in my games, I probably would have just attacked because I'm overly aggressive. So he still is going to get 7 damage, though, so that's nice. And he's got 2 4/4s on the board they didn't before. So Savjz is looking pretty good so far in this game. Even with the Consecrate, it's not a huge, huge concern. Now he will probably lose one of those 4/4s. Obviously, if the Argent Commander comes out, that's what it would be. It's, again, you know, think of it as getting a 4/3 and 4 damage on any creature. Is really what it amounts to be, rather than a 4/3 with Divine Shield. Could play Sylvanas, I guess, but she's not really going to die too quickly at this point yet. Then again, he's in that awkward position too, where Consecrate is still going to leave 2 4/2s on the board, and if he plays it, he's not going to really have enough to play anything else, because you don't really want to play the Abusive Sergeant. Now, he also does have 1 charge of his weapon, obviously, but if you're going to attack with Consecrate anyway, it seems a little bit wasteful. I think this is absolutely the right play. Put out the Argent Commander, and then use your weapon to take down one of the 4/4s. And again, he'll only take 2 damage from that because of the healing, so he'll be down at 9, as you can see. And so now he leaves his opponent with the choice. Do you want to trade, or do you want to just try to get through and do more damage? And he knows he's low health. He's still in a little bit of trouble here. Let's see what Savjz can do. Remember, he can do 4 damage total with his weapon because of Deadly Poison. I mean, 3 damage, rather, total with his weapon because of Deadly Poison. 4 damage with the Dwarf. Potentially 5 if he Shattered Hand Clerics it. So he's nearly got lethal, but just not quite. And we'll see if he can draw lethal with this. Nope, just Backstab, which isn't going to help him a whole lot. So he can get Savjz is very low, and interestingly enough, he could backstab the commander and then use Betrayal to finish it off with the Squire. Is he going to see it? Yeah, there we go. He saw it. Okay, great. Yeah, that'd be a great play. And there we go. So that's a very efficient way to get rid of it. And I would maybe go for Van Cleef, honestly. I would put Van Cleef out and just get lethal on the board if I were him. We'll see if he does it. Just going to go ahead and go with the Ringleader and Van Cleef. There we go. Yeah, nice. And so that is enough that even with Consecrate for Cixah, unless Cixah draws something really crazy here his next turn, I think Savjz is in pretty good shape. Let's see what the draw was. Knife Juggler. Okay, so that's not really going to help out Cixah that much. He can kill the 2/1 with his 1/1, but with only 5 health and just no way to deal with Van Cleef. I don't think there's any possible way really that Cixah can win this. Yep, gonna go ahead and use Consecrate. But again, Van Cleef, kind of the finishing move there. And there's just no way you can do 8 damage to him before next turn. And with no blockers, Savjz should have this one locked down. Yeah, that's gonna be about it. Yeah, trying to give some more attack. They go out with a bang at least. And that's it. Well played from both of these guys, and it looks like Savjz is going to go ahead and tie up the series 1-1. Awesome. We've got ourselves a series on our hands, guys. This is good stuff. So there it is. GG. Savjz takes game 2. Let's move on. Alright guys, it's time to move on to game number 3 between Cixah and Savjz here on our IHEARTHU King of the Hill Best of 7 extravaganza, I don't know, but 2 really cool games so far. Back and forth. We did have Armed and Dangerous, a rogue deck coming out of Savjz, beat Cixah's Paladin deck, which, you know, I believe I'm trying to remember what I said before the game now, but I think I said something about how I felt like it was a little bit favored, so yay me, I guess. But anyway, Cixah has a really cool deck coming out. It's going to be the Meta Mage, which, if you're wondering about the name, as we look through this deck, we can tell. We can see where the name comes from, because remember what we talked about earlier, where the meta right now in Hearthstone does lean towards this sort of aggressive mid-range style of play. Well, if you look at the Meta Mage that we've got from Cixah, we have a situation where it's more of a slower mage control deck. And it's got a lot of good direct damage on there too. I love the fact that he's included the Argent Commanders in this, because again, it's kind of like getting to do a little bit of direct damage, and you get a 4/3 out of it as well, rather than thinking of it as something with Divine Shield. He's got Flame Strike in there as well. This is more of a slower, controlling version of Mage than we saw Savjz play earlier in game number 1. So, if all goes well, if he gets the draws that he wants to, he should be able to beat this. We'll see, because generally, I'm not saying it's rock, paper, scissors exactly, because it never is. But because there's player skill involved, there's drawing involved and things like that, but certain types of decks do well against other types of decks. It's just kind of how it works. So really super aggro does well against control, but control does better against the slightly slower mid-range aggro, which is what we see here. So we'll see if Cixah can take it. Armed and Dangerous, this rogue deck is still very, very strong. It still can be very explosive with all the buffing that's involved in it. So I think either one of them actually have a really, really good chance of taking this. But whoever does is going to pull out into the lead, and we'll see if they can take it. So let's get into the game. Alright, here we go guys, game number 3, Cixah versus Savjz, and it looks like Savjz got the coin for turn 2. Cixah passes it over, so how's Savjz going to start it? You could coin into an engineer, it's a possibility. Cixah has a good amount of control, good amount of spells in there. Look at all those gold cards, wow, he's blinging. But Savjz is just going to pass the turn over instead, save that coin for a little bit later. And so, Cixah is just going to do a damage, just use the mage ability to ping him a little bit. Oh, nice. Wow, that's a great draw. Okay, so he could... Alright, so he is just going to go ahead and play the Novice Engineer for the draw. Not going to coin into Ringleader or anything like that. It is a little bit more dangerous, of course, against Mage because the opportunity to cast Cone of Gold, which is in Cixah's hand. So Savjz's kind of theme this game is he knows he needs to be more explosive. He knows he needs to find ways to sort of surprise Cixah with damage, because if he doesn't, anything he puts out is probably just going to die because of the control nature of Rogue. So the fact that Savjz hasn't gotten anything really out yet and gotten any damage done, per se, quite yet, is a little bit worrisome. Like here, I would go for Blood Mage Thalnos into Defias Ringleader, because yeah, he can be pinged, but whatever, he's a card draw. You put him in there because you know he's going to die. And there's really not a whole lot else you can really do. I mean, Shattered Hand Cleric, you don't want to play that without anyone to cast it on. Deadly Poison isn't that great. And yeah, there we go. So it is going to be Blood Mage Thalnos and also the Ringleader as well. So get some stuff out on the board. Luckily for Cixah, he's had Cone of Cold since turn number 1, so he can use that. And he's going to, it looks like. Okay. There we go. And is he going to Arcane Missiles? Nope. Just going to go ahead. Oh, there we go. Alright. He's going to go ahead and use Arcane Missiles, do a little bit more damage, and take out that 2-1. Passing it back over to Savjz. So, what Savjz is going to do now? He's got the Arcane Squire. Yeah, you might as well buff it a little bit. And with Divine Shield, that's going to be a little bit harder to handle. So now, finally, Savjz has something out on the board that he's confident that Cixah won't be able to immediately deal with. Now, we know that Cixah has the capability to do that, but he's just going to go ahead and draw. And, oh wow, he got Mirror Image, nice. So he's going to get a couple Taunters out of this, and this will help him delay. And remember, this deck is all about delaying. You don't necessarily want to kill their creatures right off, you just kind of want them to not be able to hurt you. You want to delay them and then kill them with spells with this kind of deck. So, we'll see if he can do it. The Taunting Mirror Images bought him another turn, bought him a little bit more time. This would be a good turn for Blizzard. Yep, and he's going to go ahead and do that, I think. Yep, there we go. There's the Blizzard. And that's going to be his turn, but again, it buys him time. He's waiting for that moment when he can put down all the direct damage, when he can finish off some of those creatures. But he's going to need to do it quick, because this deck, as we talked about earlier, can be a bit explosive. And with that Argent Commander out, that's going to be a bit annoying. Luckily, Cixah has another Blizzard, and he's got enough to actually ping and then do it. So that's going to actually nearly clear the board. Just a frozen 4-1 after this. That is it. So Savjz still hasn't gotten a ton of traction yet. Would maybe think about Defender of Argus, but no, he's just going to throw Sylvanas out there. I don't know about that. Yeah, okay, he's pulling it back. I wouldn't do that, just because there's no guarantee that you'll be able to get anything out of it. Oh, he's going to do it anyway. Okay, alright, well, there's Sylvanas. And just doing a damage with the hero ability. And we'll see what Cixah has to respond with. Obviously, Pyroblast in the hand. Got enough to cast it. Flame Strike is there as well. And we're going to see the Fairy Dragon go out. Alright. And there's Frostbolt. So just locking up Sylvanas, making sure that she can't attack or anything like that. And he's able to kill the 4-1. So Cixah, really, really good control over this game right now. He seems to have all the answers. His hand is getting a little bit low, though. So I would be maybe a little bit nervous at this point if I were Cixah. Savjz has a lot of creatures in his hand. He's got a lot of ways to kind of sustain and do damage. And without the AoE for Cixah, it may be a little bit difficult to catch up late game. We'll see. This one could really go either way at this point. No need to really use a hero ability right now. I would honestly... and he kind of doesn't want to really buff Sylvanas that much because he wants her to die. So he can take something from his opponent. But I would maybe consider going ahead and making her into a blocker with the Defender of Argus already. He can't backstab actually because the Fairy Dragon obviously can't be targeted by hero spells or abilities. So again, he's got that weird situation where he's got a lot of combos but not a lot to use it with. I would maybe think about Deadly Poison, and he's going to do it after using his hero ability. Yeah, plenty of mana, so why not? Do some damage with that. And then he can do 2 damage with his SI7 agent because you can target the Fairy Dragon with Battle Cries. That is a difference. And now might as well just leave it at that. Because one thing he may want to think about doing, he could play the Ringleader here, and with 2 Blizzards already casted, I would actually do the Ringleader. Because he knows there's already been 2 Blizzards out, so... Alright, Flame Strike is still a concern, and it is in Cixah's hand, so in this particular case, it's a good call. There's the Frostbolt. But I feel like you just need to get stuff out there just to draw their spells out, and with the card advantage that he had, he, you know, could have pressed that a little bit more, but... we'll see. Cixah's got a pretty strong drop with that Argent Commander. A little bit of annoyance there. So in this particular case, if he wants to get rid of that guy, he's probably going to have to lose his 3-3. Could buff it with the Defender of Argus after he attacks it with himself. At this point, you know, you're still using your health as a utility, so it's kind of like pay 4 health to remove the Divine Shield. Could potentially backstab, I guess, as well. But he's thinking. He wants to maintain board control. And more importantly, he wants to find ways to do damage to his opponent while he can. Because he knows just what a huge amount of control his opponent has. And he's going to give up that 3-3, I guess. Okay. Yep, giving up the 3-3. But he can still do 5 damage and get another 3-3 on the board because of it. So that's fine. There's the Ringleader. Unfortunately, I think we all know what's coming next turn. It's probably going to be Flame Strike. So you can actually play the Defender too? Nope, not going to play it. Okay. So there we go. 3-3-2-2 and a 2-1 out. And here comes Flame Strike. So 10 mana, and he could actually... oh wow, look at that. He could put up Mana Worm, Fairy Dragon, and Flame Strike. But he may want to save the Fairy Dragon. We'll see. I would play it. He's going to play it. Okay. Yeah. Get some stuff out there. So yeah, Flame Strike doing what it's supposed to, and that's the only Flame Strike in the deck. Savjz does not know that, but we do. Looks like he's going to be able to use Betrayal quite nicely there. And yeah, I would play the Argent as well. Or the Defender of Argus, rather. So now he's got a Taunter, does some damage. Again, he's got board control, and now he has to kind of hope that Cixah just doesn't really draw what he needs to get rid of the creatures. It's kind of the key there. Pyroblast and Fireball. Okay. So here's the question for Cixah. Does he decide to just go all in and just do as much damage as he possibly can with direct damage spells? Or does he go ahead and just concentrate on, again, handling the creatures? Unfortunately, he doesn't have enough mana to cast both of those spells with only 10 mana. You could Fireball and then attack the with your 3/3 Mana Worm into the 4/4 and then ping it for 1. And that would be a way to get rid of it. He may just Fireball it too and keep his creature alive. That's probably a better idea. Yeah, there we go. Okay. No, actually he is going to. Okay. I called it before I actually saw what happened on the screen. So he is going to give up his creature. You could make an argument for using the Fireball and doing potentially more damage later. But as we know now, it's good he did what he did because of that second Defender of Argots that Savjz had in his deck. So Cixah are really in dire straits right now. Yikes. What's he going to draw? Is it any AoE? Mirror Image keeps him alive. He can Mirror Image and Pyroblast. So he can still take this game. Okay. It doesn't leave him enough to Pyroblast. Interesting. He didn't use the Pyroblast, which I'm a little bit surprised about actually, because you might as well get that out of the way. You don't necessarily always want to save Pyroblast until the very last moment, and it looks like it didn't matter anyway. There we go, GG, and Savjz takes game number 3. Alright guys, here we are going into game number 4. Armed and Dangerous has taken another victory for Savjz. He's 2-1 over Cixah right now, and if he wins this game, he's going to put himself 1 game away from being our first ever repeat champion of the IHEARTHU King of the Hill, which I guess in my mind is kind of hard to imagine because we've had a different champion each week, but so far this rogue deck is looking pretty scary. But Cixah is bringing out the mini lock deck, it looks like, which I would say if you take the concept from his Paladin deck and bring it over to Warlock, this is kind of what you would get. Again, Cixah's favorite card ever, it looks like, the Knife Juggler. I don't know if that's actually his favorite card, but I think it is. He's like the Knife Juggler advocate extraordinaire, but you can see a lot of buffing as well. And again, you know, this theme that we're seeing cropping up in Hearthstone is not a lot of spells, mostly creatures, because what people are figuring out is that you can get extra damage done and keep a creature around with including buffing stuff rather than just put in simple direct damage spells as well where you use it and it's gone. Obviously, when possible, you want to do something that then causes an effect that's long-lasting, which is minions, which is creatures. So that's another example of that in this deck. Is it going to be enough to take out the rogue? It really depends on the draws. Again, this is a situation where both the decks are going to have about the same speed. So whoever has that better starting hand, whoever can get off to a better start and make crucial good decisions in turns like 1 through 4 is probably going to win the game. This is going to be one of those games where turns 1 through 4 is going to be the most important thing, more than anything else. So we'll see what happens, we'll see what the players draw, and we'll see if Cixah can tie up the series. Let's get in the game. And here we go, game number 4. Cixah trying to tie up the series. He's gotten turn 2, he's got the coin, and meanwhile Savjz is going to throw down that turn 1 Argent Squire. So Cixah, is he going to just go ahead and coin out a couple 1-drops? He's got 3, wow. He could coin out the Knife Juggler, but of course it would be a bad idea because Savjz could just kill it with the Squire and the hero ability. So we'll see what he decides to play. Blood Imp, always a safe turn 1. And I mean the Squire isn't too bad either, matching Squire for Squire. Because if he's going to attack it, he's going to use up the shield. But it looks like it's going to be Blood Imp. Yep, there we go. There is the Blood Imp. And so Savjz going to be able to get at least 1 damage done here. Oh, nice draw. He's got the Novice Engineer now as well. And yep, he's going to just go ahead and play that, get the card draw. And so a nice little bit of early board control for Savjz. Remember, what we said was that the first couple turns are going to be just absolutely crucial for these guys. So now on Cixah's turn, draws a Harvest Golem, and is he going to coin it out, or is he going to maybe coin out Knife Juggler into like an Argent or something? Okay, so it looks like it is going to be the Golem. Alright, just putting more powerful creatures out there, and with the Blood Imp, it is 2/4, which is kind of nice. Kind of nice to handle. But unfortunately for him, yeah, there's the backstab, and he's going to go ahead and kill it with the SI7 agent. Nice play. So that 2/1 is going to be dealt with very easily as well. Probably with the Squire, I'm guessing, and then he can just hit for 1 with his gnome. Yeah. Well, it's got 2 health because of the Flame Imp, yeah. A little bit rough, a little bit annoying to deal with, but he does end the turn with a 3-3 and a 1-1, so that's not too bad. And now the Knife Juggler, I think, is going to come into play for Cixah. Yep, there it is. And he can go ahead and drop one of those 1-drops. Argent Squire trying to do a little bit of damage. Will he drop the other Squire? He could Soulfire, I guess. Okay, he is going to. There we go. And then a second Squire as well. Does he get the RNG to take out the 1-1? No, he doesn't play it. Okay. I was kind of... It's hard because sometimes the player hand things down at the bottom of the screen don't match the game board itself. So trying to look at the hand in the game board is a little bit confusing sometimes. Blizz, spectator mode, please. Alright, so it looks like it's going to be Deadly Poison on that to take out the Knife Juggler. Not bad. And another Argent Squire. So he's still got, you know, that good, pretty decent board control. But it's just a Flame Imp. It's just really annoying to deal with. Savjz is going to need to wait for something like Betrayal to hopefully take that out. Oh, nice. Voidwalker. So he could go ahead and do that. Toss it out. He will. And just using Life Tap to draw another card. Let's see what he draws here. So Voidwalker, 2 Voidwalkers. Wow. And that's going to be really annoying to deal with. 2 1/4s is not something that rogues are equipped to handle too easily. But he does have Eviscerate. That can do 4 damage, so he's got one right there. And he also can do 1 damage plus the 3 from his weapon between him and the Argent Squire. So he actually can handle both of them, surprisingly enough, this turn. And he can attack for 2 with one of his Argents. See what he decides to do. There we go. Okay. So 2. And this is another way, too, where he can keep all of his creatures alive as well. You may be like, well, why not just put the damage on the Argent Squire and then keep the Divine Shield and keep it alive? Well, he could do that, but then he would be down to 2 creatures rather than 3. And having numerical board control is really, really important in Hearthstone and many CCGs. So, Knife Juggler and Defender of Argus for Cixah. And he doesn't quite have enough mana to play both. That's the tricky part of that here. Defender of Argus would be the safer play. We'll see if he decides to do it. There we go, yeah, Defender of Argus. And so that's going to put him in a position to have some strong blockers, and attacking with the Flame Imp is a great idea too. I mean, Flame Imps are, you know, good to keep cloaked, but remember they're there. You know, don't concentrate so much on never attacking with a Flame Imp to miss an opportunity to actually make it work. And with that Argent Commander, though, Savjz is going to be able to handle things quite nicely. 4-3 and a 3-1. Let's see. Cixah could get lucky with the Knife Juggler. We'll see if he does with the Shattered Hand Cleric. And he's just going to go ahead and buff the Argent Commander. Okay. Yeah, buffing that up to a 4-4, because why not? Oh, it hit the 4-2. Bummer. That's annoying, but oh well. At least he'll be able to keep his Defender of Argus alive. It'll be down to a 4-1. Oh no, he's just going to attack through. Alright, that's fine. I mean, when you have board advantage like that, sometimes you do just want to attack through and just try to get that little bit of a life total advantage too. Especially if you're in a situation where you are kind of top decking a little bit. There goes the Knife Juggler. Wasn't going to get a whole lot more use out of it anyway, so it's not too bad for Cixah. But overall, I mean, the board control that Savjz has is pretty good right now. I mean, the 2-3 being a Harvest Golem specifically is very, very strong. So Cixah is going to play this Argent Commander, of course, but do you just attack right through, or do you take out one of their guys? And it looks like he's deciding to just go with that, because he knows that it's going to take 2 stuff. Oh, no. Oh, the Argent Commander. On the Argent Commander without a shield. This is kind of disastrous for Cixah right now. I'm just going to be amazed, actually, if Savjz manages to pull this one out. Not any commentary on Savjz as a player, but just that we've never had a repeat champion on this King of the Hill, and he's going to be 3-1 if he wins this game. Alright, Ironbeak Owl. Okay, so he gets the silence off on the Golem. That's okay. Plays a Golem of himself. So Savjz does have some trading decisions to make. Oh, but the Shattered Sun Cleric is so good. He can just attack the 2-1 with his hero ability, and then he can buff up his own Golem and be able to trade Golem to Golem if he wants to. I probably would do that, just because then you can clear the board and still have 3 creatures on himself, but he's just going to attack through. Alright. There we go. He's got the edge, so you can do it. It's the more aggressive play, but hey, why not? So what's Cixah going to draw? Fairy Dragon. Alright, well, it's a good creature, but it's not the most helpful thing in the world. The nice thing with being a Warlock is you can draw 2 cards per turn because of your hero ability. Flame Imp, unfortunately, is something that he's going to really kind of need to put out. But Oh, well, he can't really put it out, though, because he's going to bring himself down to 8, which would bring himself down to lethal damage, which he's already very close to anyway. Ah, he's dead anyway. Yeah, there we go. Alright, well, bad luck there for Cixah. And Savjz takes game number 4, so Savjz is 1 game away from being our first repeat champion here on the IHEARTHU King of the Hill. Guys, we are about to possibly have our first ever repeat champion here on the IHEARTHU King of the Hill right now. Savjz is 3-1 against our challenger Cixah. This armed and dangerous rogue deck is so good, so consistent. I mean, if you want another deck, we've talked about a couple of them already today, but if you want yet another deck that's super consistent, gets a lot of wins on the ladder, a lot against wins against your friends and things like that, this type of rogue deck is the way you want to play. In general, mid-range aggression right now is the way to play Hearthstone. It's the strongest way by far, and Six has brought out his own rogue deck. He's going to give it a try. So meta rogue, again, referencing what I was just talking about, the current Hearthstone meta, which is that mid-range aggression. A couple little differences here, and it's interesting stuff. I agree. I actually like that he hasn't put in Betrayal. I'm personally not a big fan of Betrayal just because you need to have your opponent with 2 creatures on their side of the board to be able to use it. And so that's kind of a conditional thing where if you draw it early, it can kind of just sit in your hand a little bit. So, I don't know. And you can see even Savjz has some of the same thoughts because he's only got 1 in his deck rather than 2. So you can see that he thinks too, and everybody really should, that it's kind of a more situational card. It's fine that Savjz has it in his deck. It's fine that Cixah does not. I probably would lean towards not putting it in my deck just because I want to make sure that I can use every single thing I draw in the most varied situations. So no Betrayal in the meta rogue deck for Cixah. Let's look at some of the other dangers or other differences and dangerous differences, but who's it dangerous for? I guess we'll find out. Alright, so Fan of Knives. He's got that in there. This card in general I'm not a big fan of. It's, yeah, I don't know, Fan of Knives and all that. Anyway, it does 1 damage to everything. It lets you draw a card, but it costs 3 mana, and there's not really a lot of stuff that has 1 health out at the time that you would be playing Fan of Knives. All the 1 health minions and things are generally dead by turn 3. So I don't know. I really don't like this card in general, but Six has put it in there. It is card draw. It is a way to maybe get something low enough to finish off with something else. You can also backstab something with 3 health down to 1 health and then Fan of Knives it. So it's got its place, but I don't know. I don't really like that one quite as much. Looking at the other stuff, we see very, very similar creatures across the board. We see the Defender of Argus in there, Argent Commanders, which are in almost every deck these days, and also Savjz Windrunner. And you know what, guys? I'm going to actually just come out and say it. I don't really like Savjz Windrunner that much. I mean, she's a 5 for a 5/5, so card efficiency-wise, she's fine. 5 health, 5 attack for 5 mana, that's fine. Her ability, though, think about if you play Savjz. How many times have you actually gotten to control a creature out of her? And if you look at games where she's played, especially like games today, how many times has somebody actually gotten to use her Death Rattle? And the answer is 0. I've played around with her quite a bit myself. I have not really gotten to use her Death Rattle that much. And again, this goes back to the fact that removal in Hearthstone is so strong that just the likelihood of something like that happening, the likelihood of that Death Rattle happening, is a little bit too remote for me to include the card in my decks. So I don't use Savjz. I don't think she's the worst card ever, but I don't think she's quite as good as people think she is right now. And I've got a feeling we're going to see in the next few weeks a decline of her in decks. Mark my words, guys. We'll see Savjz kind of go away and retreat back into the Undercity. But enough about that. I think it's time to see if Cixah can take a win, bring it to 3-2 and keep himself alive, or if Savjz is going to become our first ever repeat champion here on the IHEARTHU King of the Hill. Let's get in the game. And here we go. What could be the final game? I hope it's not, but what could be the final game between Cixah and Savjz has begun. Savjz up 3-1. He's got the coin, he's got turn 2, and he's going to coin right into the ringleader. This is our town. It's still their town, scrubs. And the Leper Gnome can definitely deal with the 2-2 and still do 2 damage to Savjz, so he can still get a little bit of use out of it, but we'll see. It's Rogue v Rogue. And he's going to actually backstab the 2-2 and get that board clear. Alright, so that's not bad. attacking through at the 2-1. I like it. I like it. That's nice, because now we've got a minimum of 4 damage, which always was the case, and he's going to use the hero ability to take up the 2-1. Nice turn from Cixah. I really, really like what he did that. Alright, so 2 mana, Novice Engineer, or does he use his hero ability? I feel like in this case you got to use the hero ability, and I really think he should, because otherwise you're just going to end up taking more damage from that Leper Gnome. So he took a total of 6 damage from it, but keep in mind, if he had not attacked it, there's a potential that he would have taken like a minimum of 8, depending on what happened. So you really do have to just kind of bite the bullet and do it. Harvest Golem comes out for Cixah, and he's going to be able to just swing for 1 with his hero ability. So what is Savjz going to play? He's got his own Harvest Golem, might as well put that out there. And yeah, I agree with this. Keep a charge on the weapon. It's 2 mana that you don't need to spend later if there's something with 1 health that you need to get rid of. So yeah, I'd say definitely not attack in that case. Novice Engineer, another card draw. We've got very similar turns for all these guys, but so far Cixah with a little bit of an edge. And there's a Fairy Dragon, a nice play there. Just because you can't get rid of it with some of that direct damage and stuff. And now, let's see, Savjz. Oh, there we go, Dark Iron Dwarf. Does he really need to do this, though? Because he could kill the Golem, but at the same time, he would be vulnerable to, you know, other things as well. I guess he just wants to get rid of the Golem completely because he can use his hero ability to take up the 2-1, and that's what he's going to do. So he gets rid of the Golem. He's got a 4-1 that's obviously not going to make it through the next turn. I'm sure Cixah is going to attack that with his Novice Engineer. But we'll see. He can also use the Shattered Sun Cleric to buff up his Fairy Dragon to a 4-3, which wouldn't be too bad. There's the Engineer. 3 more mana. So do you use Eviscerate in this case and then kill the 4-4? That may be a better idea. And it looks like he's thinking about it. There we go, yeah. So using the Eviscerate, and now you can just trade the 1-2 for the 4-1 and hit for 3. So yeah, Cixah in firm control of this game right now. Maybe might have wanted to take out the 2-1, but that would have left him with just a 1-2, so I don't know. We'll see. Could be something he ends up regretting for it. It's all just a matter of what his opponent has in terms of removal. There's the Argent Squire. Not a lot of removal in there, but remember it's mostly creatures, and Defender of Argus is going to make it really tough for Cixah to get through in these next couple turns. So yeah, we'll see how this ends up going. I mean, he can take out 1 blocker, but keep in mind, one of those blockers is a 2-2 with Divine Shield. Okay. So Shattered Sun Cleric. He's got 6 mana, so he could cast 2 of them, and then buff up the Fairy Dragon enough to kill the 3-1 without dying, but then he would just lose it next turn, so I wouldn't do that. I would use the hero ability, which is what he's going to do. Take 3 damage for it, why not? And let's see, Defender of Argus. Alright, yeah, he can use his own. Get his own blocker, a little bit stronger. Still keeps it alive with the 4-1. The 2-2 taunt is still alive anyway. And so now back to Savjz. He's going to go ahead and throw out the Azure Drake, I guess. I would maybe think about playing the Argent Commander as well. Although he may want to save that for combo purposes. But nope, he's not going to. Okay. Yeah, just hit with the 2-2. And then trade 3 3s and continue to maintain board advantage. Remember, with nearly identical decks with this, it's all about keeping board control. Because the idea is that most of these games are going to get down to where both players have had their hands drained. And then in the end, whoever has traded their minions more efficiently is going to have that, like, unassailable board control. So both of these guys know this. Cixah at a little bit of a disadvantage now. Has to play that Shattered Sun Cleric without getting the benefit of the Battle Cry, but he is able to use his SI7 agent to get rid of the Divine Shield. Takes the damage, but gets rid of the 1-1 anyway, so that's fine. And so now it's back up to Savjz to try to get that board control back once again. And he can, you know, I mean, obviously he can trade creature to creature and keep his dragon alive. So he may, let's see, the health totals too are getting to be a bit of a concern, honestly. I would go ahead and play something and then play the Defender of Argus into it. I would try to get the blockers out again and sort of try to stabilize a bit if I were him. With 7 mana, he's going to go ahead and go for the card draw. And the SI7 agent is nice. And there's Sylvanas, okay. So he's kind of going to play the Come At Me Bro card. Not going to worry about blocking right now. And will Cixah want to trade for any of this? Cixah now in a situation where he doesn't really have a whole lot that can handle what Savjz has out on the board. The Defias Ringleader isn't going to be too helpful in terms of doing damage or in terms of getting rid of creatures as much. Certainly can't do it immediately, of course. Shattered Sun Cleric, yeah, he could buff to just get a little bit more damage out of his 3/3. He could turn into a 4/4. He could also play his own Sylvanas. Wouldn't be a bad idea. Can use that hero ability, and he's got that health lead, so yeah, taking 4 damage is perfectly fine here. So do you play Sylvanas? That's the question.
We must
gonna buff, and yeah, the ringleader. Okay, yeah, I like this. All right. So again, you just get the numbers out there. If he played Sylvanas, then, you know, remember, he would just be, his opponent would be able to trade Sylvanas Windrunners with each other, and then we'd have all sorts of weird creature swapping. So don't really want to let that happen. Now, I really like Savjz's hand because the creatures that he has are generally more durable, and with Cixah at only 1 card in hand, this is a dangerous moment for Cixah. Because I've got a feeling we're going to have that Defender of Argus come out. Yeah, and there he is. So now, I mean, oh wow, look at that, an 8/6 Sylvanas. That is going to be so hard for Cixah to deal with. We'll see what he draws. What's it going to be? Back on his turn, Deadly Poison. Oh, that does not help at all. Alright, so how does he trade here? He's going to go ahead and just whittle down the Defender, of course, first of all. Why not? Does he use everything to take out Sylvanas? You know, you might as well, because then she doesn't get any use out of her Death Rattle, and I guess that's another example of what I was talking about, where I feel like her Death Rattle isn't that great. But, at least, for Savjz's sake, she was buffed a ton. And he's going to go ahead and use Deadly Poison and take out the final creature, yeah. So, again, you know, just trying to be aware of the fact that when the game does get to that point where people's hands are drained, having that board control is more important than having health. And he is in dire straits a little bit here. It is a little bit risky. 9 mana, you could go Shattered Sun Cleric into 2 agents and then do 4 damage out of that to your opponent, and then hopefully have enough to finish him off the next turn between attacking and eviscerating. I think that's probably the best option. You could get him so low, down to 5 health, and then probably finish him off next turn, because you know there's not going to be any big AoE coming out of Cixah, because he's playing Rogue, right?
This guy's toast.
So there you go. And I would agree. Yep, totally the right decision for Savjz right there. And unfortunately for Cixah, I think that kind of locks up the game, because let's see what he draws. Hold on. What's he going to draw? Argent Commander. Well, okay. Let's see what he can do. He can try to clear out some of the board there. But even still, I mean, it's going to be 3 damage plus 2. Yeah, there's still nothing that Cixah can do with that Eviscerate in Savjz's hand. Savjz has the game. He's got it locked up. So that's it, Savjz. I'm sure he's going to attack and then Eviscerate. That's about it. And there you go. So, Savjz, congratulations, our first repeat champion on the IHEARTHU King of the Hill. Cixah had some good decks, some kind of weird close matches, but in the end, Savjz takes the series 3-1. Alright guys, well there it is, Cixah falling 3-1 to Savjz unfortunately in this King of the Hill, but great for Savjz. He's our first repeat champion on the IHEARTHU King of the Hill. Congratulations to him. Had some great play with those decks, and it's, you know what, this is going to be really interesting in the next few weeks, because we've seen the, you know, such a metamorphosis of the Hearthstone metagame already throughout this. We've seen the rise of this mid-range aggro deck that really seems like the most solid way to play the game right now, because hyper aggro just isn't as consistent, and hyper control again isn't as consistent. Mid-range aggro is the way to go, so it's really kind of becoming a battle of who can get sort of the upper hand in the early turns with their mid-range aggro decks. So I'm really curious to see how the top players are going to handle this sort of shift. This is the first time where I've seen a situation where we may be sort of stuck in a certain play style with the meta. But the good news is that between 9 classes and all the cards in the game, there's so many possibilities that I think we're going to see a lot of unique stuff coming out soon. So that's going to do it for this week. Thanks again to Simpatico for doing all the great graphics you guys see. And keep in mind that definitely watch Turn 2. Definitely go check out iHeartHU.com and post on the forums. We love conversing with you. Other than that, just play a lot of Hearthstone, and we'll see you in the next IHeartHU King of the Hill.